Pokemon Journeys. Just uttering those two words alone is enough to spark both rage and sadness within the fanbase. Some people go so far to call it the worst of all time, and even months after it ended, it's really hard to argue against that statement, with the huge amount of potentials that this series had and how they wasted almost everything. Arguably one of, if not the prime example, that really represents the concept of wasted potential within the Pokemon Journeys series is a girl by the name of Cerise, aka Koharu, and how she began as a very promising prospect worthy of following the footsteps of her predecessors, and in the end became the most mistreated and disrespected character in the history of the franchise. So let us talk about the tragic tale of Cerise, overlooked and disrespected. The first time we ever see Chloe is during episode 1 of Pokemon Journeys, with her being established as a childhood friend of Go, who was introduced into the franchise as the dual protagonist alongside Ash Ketchum. Right from the get-go, the viewers could tell what the initial intent was, to establish both characters very early on, but with the emphasis being more on Go, since he has been introduced as the secondary main protagonist. That didn't really mean that Chloe was a mere side character though, with her making major appearances in both the opening theme and also in several promotional posters, showcasing that she will also be part of upcoming adventures eventually. The next relevant appearance would be in episode 2, where she encounters Ash for the very first time, in a highly amusing kind of way, and even after she encountered him for a second time, she tried her best to avoid him once again, probably out of embarrassment thanks to her friend Yamper. During this episode, we also see her waiting for her friend Go, and after she received a message from him, arriving late, she gets visibly exhausted, and even after he finally made it into the institution, she can't help but to scold him for not making it in time, and downright punishes him by representing him with some worksheets from school. So as you can tell, while very brief, the amount of screen time that Chloe got already told you a lot about her character. That she is a very loyal friend, while she struggles dealing with free-spirited characters like Ash and Go. Furthermore, thanks to both her association with her dad, Professor Cerise, and her being a student, she also seems to be very strict by the rules and does not tolerate when somebody doesn't adhere to the scheduled meeting. Just from this introduction alone, you can tell that she is indeed very different from any other Pokegirl in the past, but at the same time, this difference is what initially made her so endearing to the fans. Unfortunately, after this promising start, we soon will encounter one of the major problems that will not only start to accompany Chloe, but will stay with her for the rest of Journeys' entire run. Chloe's time in the spotlight is done, and it's time for the fans to pay attention to the adventures of Ash and Go, and it would take her until episode 11, aka more than 2 months, before she makes another relevant appearance. To be fair, this method of shifting the focus and having some time apart between character episodes is a common trope within the Poke franchise, and has been done for years. So the natural question fans had in mind is, why is this suddenly a major problem with Chloe when it wasn't a problem with past Pokegirls? The answer to that is very simple. Between episode 2 and episode 11, Chloe never received one single major appearance. While it is true that past Pokegirls also had a gap in between their respective character episodes, you still were able to see them regardless of what kind of episode it is about, no matter if it's an Ash-focused episode, an episode focused on one of his Pokemon, or even one about the other companions. The female protagonist is still there. She's still engaging with the environment, she's still interacting with the people and the Pokemon within the episode, and in general, the fans can still feel both presence and relevancy of the Pokegirl. But that right there is something that Chloe never got. As soon as her time to shine is over, she suddenly and with no explanation just disappeared into the background with no sign of her even existing, which for most people almost felt like she got completely erased out of everyone's mind. And by the time she pops out of the void of irrelevancy, people didn't care about her anymore and already marked her with terms such as useless, invisible, or just not relevant. But regardless of her lack of screen time, there were still fans who didn't give up on the Gen 8 girl, especially after she immediately stood out, not only thanks to her once again greatly written characterization, but more so thanks to the establishment of her story. In episode 11, we learn that despite being the daughter of a well-renowned Pokemon professor, she's very unsure of her own future, and even goes so far to state that she doesn't even know whether or not she likes Pokemon, combining that inner struggle with the fact that people from the outside already expect her to follow the footsteps of her dad, and soon enough, she gets tired of being put into a shelf by society, until she gets reassurance from her mom that she should follow what she wants and it will take some time to do so. This, for many fans, was the necessary spark that reignited their excitement for Chloe, because not only was it a very relatable story that people could get behind, but it also drew similar parallels to Serena, who also struggled with expectations being put upon her, and with Serena's story being regarded as one of the best in the entire franchise, fans once again started to hope that Chloe's story will also get the same treatment and care as well. So what did Pokemon Journeys do after finally breathing some life into the vessel known as Chloe? They did exactly what they did before. After Chloe finally got some much needed screen time, they pulled the rug under her feet and she once again returned into the background, while Ash, but mostly Go, took center stage with no involvement of Chloe within these episodes whatsoever. But this time they did it even worse, by more than doubling her lack of relevancy from merely 2 months to more than 5 months of no screen time, from February 2nd until July 19th. At this point, it didn't even matter that her next episode after these 5+ months was a decent one, aka about her childhood and her friendship with Yamper, because this severe neglect of Chloe resulted in not only even less fans actually caring about her, but also in more fans echoing the sentiment of the people who already were negative towards Chloe. So as you can see, not even a year into Pokemon Journeys and Chloe is already a broken character in shambles with no hope in sight of repairing her. But that didn't stop Journeys for at least trying to redeem her. So after those 7 months of barely any progression, Journeys decides to finally do the one thing with Chloe that fans wanted right from the start, giving her more screen time and making her visible again. And props to Journeys, especially after she received her Eevee and therefore officially becoming a Pokemon trainer, she actually does get more screen time and actually does go on more adventures with Ash and Go. But since this is Pokemon Journeys, they didn't really solve the problem, but more so just replace it with another one. Now instead of having way less screen time, she has a lot of it. But for the most part, she only makes major appearances during filler episodes. This strategy does solve the screen time problem of Chloe, but in return, it creates a brand new one as well. Because she is now mostly featured in fillers, there's no sense of story progression, characterization, or character development in terms of the Gen 8 girl. In the past, despite the severe lack of focus, the few times they did focus on Chloe, at least it felt like she progressed in her story, or we witnessed some sort of character moment. But thanks to the nature of fillers in general, and also Journeys overall being structured in a very episodic format, all the episodes featuring Chloe don't have any connection to each other. Therefore, they don't really contribute to her overall adventure, let alone to the adventure of Ash and Go. But what about the ones that are based on her? To answer that question, we have to look at every episode that featured an evolution in any kind of way. And soon many viewers realized even the Chloe/evolution episodes follow the same problems that the aforementioned filler episodes displayed. For the most part, it seems like that even these character-focused episodes don't have a real connection to each other. For the majority, they also don't seem to progress Chloe's overall story at all. Furthermore, despite being supposedly all about Chloe, a lot of these Eevee episodes in reality aren't really about her, and instead they just focus on the evolutions themselves and their trainer's story. So just like before, even when it should be all about her, Chloe gets pushed to the sidelines and can't even outshine side characters of the day. But besides the non-existence of both focus, connection and story progression, one aspect that really did damage Chloe's reputation was the process of flanderization. aka Pokemon Journeys only focus on just one character trait while totally dismissing all the other traits that made a character unique to begin with, and such is the case of Chloe. That the complex character, the character with so much variety and depth, and the character that fans loved at the start of Journeys, that character slowly but surely diminished, and instead of that, for a long period of time, Chloe's only character trait was introducing the evolutions. In fact, there were only 2 instances in the entirety of Journeys where a focus on Chloe actually made her achieve something that even resembled character progression. Number 1, the first return of Dawn, in which the former protagonist actually gave her some good advice that sometimes not evolving your partner could also benefit both Chloe and Eevee, and that Chloe should take her time finding an idea, and that idea will be the spark of her dream. She then also proceeds by introducing contest as an example of a potential idea. Secondly, the return of Serena, aka the only time where the involvement of an evolution didn't push Chloe to the sidelines, with her giving the new gen some much needed advice in regards of Chloe's current problem, aka not having a goal, based on Serena's own past experiences. She then proceeds to encourage her to take part in her very first contest while acting as her mentor, even going so far to give her advice she received from Ash back then. Honorable mention goes to Lana, who also gave Chloe some great advice, but sadly I can't count her into the category as well, since this episode's focus wasn't really on Chloe, but more so on Ash's return to Alola and his Alola League title defense. But anyway, it's very ironic that the only progression Chloe really made came from not only two very popular characters, but also from two generations that are regarded as the greatest of all times within the community. But besides those two exceptions, every other Chloe and Eevee focused episode has been handled very poorly, resulting in her story barely making any progression at all. She surely needed more time and more dedication like we have seen with the two examples I provided, but sadly, we already arrive at the end of Chloe's story. Although much more focus was needed at this point in time, we arrive at the near end of the Gen 8 anime. So how did Chloe's story end after everything that we have talked about so far? Sadly, especially in hindsight, it's clear that Chloe by far received the most disrespectful ending to a story of a Pokegirl ever. First of all, her last ever dedicated episode was episode 120, and we have several problems with that. Number one, it was during a 1-month break in between the quarterfinals and the semifinals of the Masters 8 tournament, so the timing of that episode alone was nonsensical, because at this point nobody really cared about a Chloe episode. Number two, it was not a story or a development episode, which was really needed for Chloe, but once again, just like always, one of several filler episodes featuring the poor girl. And to add further insult to injury, number three, the filler episode wasn't even about her, but it was all about her dad. Yes, you heard right. Instead of dedicating the last ever Chloe episode to Chloe, her development, and wrapping up her story, Janice decides to once again push the dagger just a little bit further into her back by focusing on her dad, and for just one more time, Chloe has been pushed to the sidelines. When in literally the last episode of Journeys, Chloe actually does something major. She becomes a full-fledged research fellow, now researching the world of Pokemon for her dad. She is now officially on the same pedestal and the same status as Ash and Go. Finally, after years and years of demanding it, it finally happened. After Ash and Go left the institution to follow their own dreams. So at the very end of Journeys, Chloe has no companions, no solution to her Eevee's future or even her own future. Her story never had a satisfying conclusion, and she only received the status of a main character after the series came to an end. Now to end the video, we arrive at the conclusion of Chloe's story, and sadly we have to ask ourselves one question. What went wrong? How the hell did Journeys made so many mistakes and missteps regarding a character that had so much potential for long-term storytelling? The short and simple answer, and therefore the sad truth, is Chloe is a great character in a bad anime. But if you want a somewhat longer and more expanded version of the statement, then that explanation shall be provided. The first reason is that Chloe never once has been fully established as one of the main characters of the series. This was a result of the dual protagonist concept that Journeys was trying to do, and thanks to that, it was of course much more necessary to give both Ash and Go plenty of screen time to tell their story. But then of course we have the problem that Journeys wasn't even able to successfully execute that concept as well, and instead they gave way more attention to Go and even less attention to Ash. And if even someone like Ash can't get enough screen time, then naturally there is even less screen time for Chloe to really showcase her as a main character. The second reason is that her long-term storytelling just doesn't fit the Journeys format. Like mentioned previously, many fans hoped that her long-term story will be as promising as Serena's story, who had a lot of attention, conflicts, and perseverance included in it, which in the end made her conclusion much more satisfying. But because of the format of Journeys not only being very episodic, but also constantly about in-your-face advertisement, Chloe's story really didn't have any chance to succeed. For her story to really progress and for her to really have development, every episode of her had to logically connect to each other from a story point of view, and as mentioned numerous times before, that just wasn't the case. Journeys infamously only cared about merchandise, the episodic format, and how many times they can trend on social media, no matter if it's for positive or negative reasons. Last but not least, the never-ending story. But even if Journeys did focus less on advertisement and more on storytelling, characterization, and world building, it's highly unlikely that they would have been able to properly tell Chloe's story, because it always seemed like they didn't really know or didn't really want to end it. She is supposed to represent the nature of Eevee, aka the Pokemon who has many different options of evolution to choose from, and so was Chloe, the girl who doesn't need to rush her decision, but just like Eevee, should explore every option possible. While from a symbolism point of view, it is a great tool of storytelling, unfortunately, that also results in her story potentially never ending because of her constantly searching. Journeys lasted for 3 years and fans still don't have an answer of what Chloe wants, which then resulted in less and less fans being engaged in her story, since it's never ending and doesn't really have a satisfying conclusion. What could have been the solution to this problem? Maybe a new evolution, so that we could have actually have a proper ending for Chloe's story, while also having one of those social media trending moments that Journeys always craved for. But thanks to the new anime now being here, it's very unlikely that we will ever see an end of Chloe's character arc, and it's really such a shame. She really was indeed a great character, a fantastic character, but sadly just in the wrong place at the wrong time. And that is why Chloe Cerise indeed is overlooked and disrespected. Anyway guys, I really hope you enjoyed this rather long video. What is your opinion? Tell me, and just like always, see you guys in the comments down below. Bye guys!